So I think it's really cool. I never thought that I'd be that excited about the future of the bill.
Okay, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see you. See some familiar faces and some new ones too. I love that. I think it's a great group. Naturally, I would since I started it, but it pays to work on your leadership skills. I can tell you that your employees care about it. They care about you working on your leadership skills. I bet your boss does too. I think it's more important to retain people than it is to fire them, and you don't always have a choice, but being able to help people do the best work they can do is really one of the key components of leadership, and that's why we're here today. My name is Doug Feast. I am founder of IT Leaders. We started this 8 years ago here in Indianapolis. I can't hardly believe it's been that long. But it's breakfast and networking and a couple of guest speakers and some mentorship as well. This group was started for directors and managers and staff IT positions, the people who get promoted from fabulous individual contributors to crappy managers, at least in the first iteration of their leadership journey. Many manage towards a good manager they have or away from a bad manager they have, and they often forget their team and what their team needs, at least in the first iteration of that management journey. So that's what we're focused on here today. Bathrooms are over here. If you need to leave before 10 o'clock, Bob Carter is back there, and a couple of my other cohorts will be working. You can spot them by the red badge, or you can text me, and we'll make sure that you get out of here on time. How do you keep track of what's going on in this group? ITleaders.org is the best way to do that. HTTPS /ITleaders.org/Indianapolis. We have 3 events in the area these days. We started in Louisville a couple of years ago, and we're now in Fort Wayne as well. I'll talk about that in a minute. We have a couple of other sites too that I'll mention here. There's a LinkedIn company page that I would encourage you to follow. My great helper, Russ, keeps leadership articles coming on that site and on the Twitter footprint. Indianapolis IT is what we still are. Okay, all right. Yeah, we actually have combined a LinkedIn group page, the last 2 on this, to be community for all 3 groups, so we'll talk about that in a minute. If you like what you see here, post it on social media. Take a couple of pictures for us. Take pictures of the speakers, and post it on your site so that you can influence your circle and let them know about this event. Not everybody knows about it still, even though we've reached out to so many people over the years. Many people get busy, and they go to work, and they forget that there's an opportunity for them to get better on their own. The private group is interesting. We've actually had a little bit of an uptick in utilization of that. That group is really for you all to communicate with each other. And it is Indy and Louisville and Fort Wayne at once. I think the best usage for that is some of the bullet items that we've got here. That's to validate vendors or to ask questions among your peers about how they're solving a leadership problem. Feel free to join that. I keep, this meeting is for practitioners. We don't allow sales reps in the meeting because it just doesn't work right. It reduces transparency and such. So this private group is the same way. It gives you a chance to talk to each other, be open and honest. And frankly, I don't look in there much because a lot of the vendor talk revolves around some of the things we do, and I don't want to influence that forward. We've got a mentorship program. There's about a dozen mentors that have been willing to help people along their journey. My timeline is one of those. He's here today. If you like the idea of having a mentor, I know it's been super important in my life. then I would encourage you to, number one, get your LinkedIn profile up to date. Number two, write down your hallucination of a career journey. And number three, contact me to get the one-pager, the instructions, and who's involved in the mentorship program. And then you can reach out to one of those people on LinkedIn and explore the idea of a mentor-mentee relationship. You agree to 3 dates in that program. If there's chemistry, you can continue on. If there's not, you can move on to the next person. But I think it's a good program, and I think it's difficult. I had a couple of mentors who are actually bosses. I don't know that that's as easy as it used to be. I think everybody's so busy right now, and I think sometimes it's better to have a mentor who's outside the organization. So if that's of interest to you, please reach out to me. Boot camp. Lou Russell, my old boot camp leader, has retired. She's busy taking care of her grandkids these days. So I've been working with a lady named Jennifer Green, who's a military professional. She's a pilot. And she's up in northern Indiana, and we have put together a half day, it's actually a little bit longer than a half day, but a $500, I think it's $525, program. It's a leadership one-on-one course that I think is really, really cool. And I've got some pamphlets on this here. Keith, I know we've talked about leadership in the past. It's a little bit shorter than Lou's program, but I think it's a good one-on-one class. If you've got brand new leaders in your organization, I think this is something that would be worth looking into. Jennifer Ruth just released a book, You Don't Quit a Job, You Quit a Boss, I think is the name of that. I think many of us have heard that saying before. And I know I've quit a few bosses in my career, so her book is good. She is fabulous. She spoke at the inaugural IT Leaders Northeast Indiana. So I really like how she comes and shows up, and she continues to be a leader in the military. So have a look at this if you're interested, or reach out to me specifically on boot camp. We have content these days. We started recording during COVID. We started recording these events. Eric Feggi, our fabulous videographer, does most of the work. And he not only records, but he edits and puts them all together so that they're super easy to watch and effective. We have got the entire meetings videos available on Expedient's YouTube channel. So that's youtube.com/Expedient/videos. You can see past events. You can also see events that are in the other markets as well. In addition to that, my marketing team has chopped the audio out of 2 presentations for each of the meetings and created a new podcast called IT Leaders. So you'll hear people like Ryan Brubaker in the back and other former speakers talk about their journeys and their events. If you like audio, if you like more passive medium, that's a great way to catch that info. IT Leaders, easy to find. And there's a link here so you can get to it for the via the podcast aggregator of your choice, if you like. Okay, this is your part of the meeting. People who have roles open in their organization and people who are looking for their next role. If you're looking for your next role quietly, it's probably not the right meeting to stand up and talk about it, but let's start with people who have open roles. Anyone in their organization who's got some open roles that they're looking to fill? Christy.
Christy Brandt, I'm with Knopf Installation in Shelbyville, Indiana. Our IT team is growing, so we are looking to have an IT project manager. We work with systems like SAP, Boomi, MuleSoft, Salesforce, a lot of stuff. Not to mention what we also have out in our factories. We'll also be hiring for different field service folks. We have a pretty, I would say about 100+ person remote corporate team, but then we also have factories that are all over the United States. So Knopf Careers, if you're interested, and then if you have any friends that are into social revolution and they want to join in marketing or other opportunities, it's a really good time to be at Knopf.
K-N-A-U-F. All right. Anybody else who has open roles? Ryan.
Ryan Brubaker, C-Spring. We're looking for a senior data visualization engineer. So if you know someone who does data visualizations, I would love to talk to them.
Fabulous. Anyone else? Open roles? Greg.
Greg Flat Earth Networking. We are currently looking for a cybersecurity engineer and cybersecurity analyst, both remote roles.
Fabulous. Anil?
Hey, Marin from Yash Technologies. We are looking for e-commerce platform expertise.
E-commerce platform. Anyone in specific or more general?
It's Optimizely.
Okay, Optimizely, yeah.
Site. Yeah.
All right, excellent. Anyone else?
Dale Hawkins,
Dale?
Subaru of Indiana. We're looking for a wireless network engineer,
Okay.
and we're probably going to put in some private cellular, so it'd be a good opportunity.
Ooh, that sounds fun. Private cellular and wireless. Anyone else? Go ahead.
We have two roles, principal software engineer and a senior cloud infrastructure engineer.
Principal software engineer and senior cloud network engineer over at KSM with Ben Phillips. Got that? Okay, how about looking for the next role? Who's on the market? Who's looking for an opportunity? Paul?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Arbo. I am looking for a PMO role. My last two roles were senior portfolio manager at C&O. After that, I served as a data and operations manager at Microsoft for a while. I would say if it's organization and data, then Paul's your guy. So looking forward to finding out whether or not anyone has an opening or knows of one. Thank you.
Paul's a long-time listener. So.
Yeah, COVID stopped the attendance there for a bit, but
Yeah, it stopped a lot of things.
yep, sure did.
All right. Anyone else? Anyone else looking for their next role? Brad?
Brad Boyer. I've been living abroad for a while and coming back home to Indianapolis, so I just left Volkswagen out of Seattle. I was director of architecture there for the automotive cloud, so built a brand new platform for Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche for connecting. We have 10 million cars running on there now. We just started about 2.5 years ago from zero. So if you want somebody that's really good at building teams and transforming or building something new or changing application or doing digital transformation, I've got years of experience doing that. I've got a lot of IoT experience. I've been in hardware and product too, so I'm a double E and computer science. So just trying to.
You have a personality.
I do have a little bit of a person. I got lots of hobbies too. So if you're into cars or remote control or anything remote control or music, then you can hit me up for that too. So, but thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Ehsan. I'm looking for more like a business development or marketing roles in IT landscape. My last two roles in here was Salesforce, working as business development, and the next one was in a recent company that just got acquired by Milestone Technologies. So we are basically serving IT services. That includes all the managed services you can imagine. We would provide that. So I was looking after the business development side. So yeah, I'll be happy to connect with you guys.
Thanks, Ehsan. All right. Thank you for that. Upcoming meetings. Louisville is our next meeting on the calendar, April 9th. I've got a couple of really great speakers down there. Shane Rodabaugh, who is with IT infrastructure at Baptist Health down there. He's going to be talking about authenticity. Shane has been coming since we started in Louisville. He's a great leader. I'm really excited about that. From one of the other health systems, Louisville's a big health systems town. Laura Mattingly, who is in IT finance, she's going to be talking about rapport building, and she is also well known down there. So I think both of those will be good. I would encourage you to come down if you have the flexibility to get down there. April 9th at 8 a.m. Fort Wayne, May 7th, 8 a.m. is at Indianapolis, at Indiana Tech's team building, which is pretty much downtown. I've got two speakers, Craig Srota, who is a CIO for hire up in the area, and Terry Gower, who, former owner of one of the data centers up there, they are using the working genius assessment. They're talking about how to use this as an evaluation tool. And I think this will be a really great one to attend to. They've had enormous success with helping people along their individual contributor roles and along their leadership journeys using this working genius assessment tool. I had never heard of it. I had looked into it a little bit and it was super interesting. So I'm looking forward to that meeting as well. And then finally, our next Indy event is May 21st. Remember, this event is typically the third Tuesday of every other month. So there's some exceptions to that, but this year it's all third Tuesdays. May 21 is the next event. Kevin Kujala, CIO of Allied Benefits, is going to be speaking. He's going to be talking about performance evaluation, which is actually a topic that a few of you in the room have asked about. How do I evaluate appropriately? I know there's the corporate look and feel and order and process, but how are you really evaluating your people appropriately? I think Kevin's got a really nice take on this. And then our own Adam Pryor, a long-time attendee from Subaru, is going to be talking about change, which I don't know about your IT organization, but most of the ones I talk to are involved in a lot of change these days. So sign up for that. The sign up should be up by the end of the week. And many thanks to our host here and my employer, Expedient, for building this room for us and for making sure that we are doing community outreach with no expectation of anything in return. Expedient is a 15 data center fleet in 10 cities. We're one of the largest VMware clouds, and with the changes of VMware, we're actually one of the most attractively priced VMware alternatives, including the cloud side of it, especially with the 3 to 10-fold increase in pricing. So if that's of interest to you, let's chat about it. We do a lot of other things besides that. Those are our two big categories of services. Okay, let's talk about who's talking today. We're going to start out with Mike Eaton from Genesis. Mike's going to be talking about trust and how it affects your team. And then Chuck Christian from Francisco Alliance is going to be talking about coaching and leadership. Mike, let me get you set up. Here's the clicker. We'll get started.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Eaton. I'm a Director of Operations at Genesis within our Beyond Education team. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how trust affects our team. So one of the ways that I like to work with my team is through that personal connection. I like to share, things that have happened in my career to help make that contact with my team. And so that's kind of what I'm going to share today. I've got a season I'm kind of coming through, finishing up. That's got some, I think it's got some great points, how it affects trust in our teams. Got a few informational slides I'll go through, talk a little bit about myself, and then we'll jump into our topic. So if you're not familiar with Genesis, we're a global leader in cloud customer experience and contact center solutions. Genesis Cloud is our flagship product, providing omni-channel experience, experience orchestration, workforce management, just to name a few. As a company, we span over 100 countries across the globe, 6 continents, and we've got a little over 6,000 employees. So Genesis Beyond is our education department, so I run the operations team there. So what we're providing is for our Genesis customers is technical training on our platforms, certification. We offer various modalities for our training. We do ebooks, we have self-study courses, instructor-led courses, we offer certification. We've got about 8,000 subscribers. We offer several different types of subscriptions for our platforms. So it's a very, very quickly growing area of business for us in educating our customers on how to take advantage of their platform. Certifications, we're about 7,000 plus and continuing to grow. My operations team has a pretty wide breadth of responsibilities. So it starts with our support team. Our support team's handling access with our labs, account-related issues, invoicing questions, questions about our website. We have an education website that we're directly tied into. I've got a sales support team. The sales support team is handling kind of the end of the sales cycle. They're helping with order management, invoicing, working with finance. So we've got an aspect of Salesforce that we work out of and support for opportunity and product management as far as what we're selling. And then I've got the data and analytics team. They're helping provide reports, trends, data visualization to help the business make data-driven decisions. And then we run our program office, our PMO, out of ops as well, so he's helping to guide all of our project work that we've got going on. And then lastly, I've got kind of our tech team. Our tech team is managing our learning management system. Our learning management system is closely tied to our website, so they're really helping to drive that education experience, and they're managing some of our other tech projects that we have as well. So a little about myself. I've been with Genesis about 8.5 years. If you've been around Indy or remember, Interactive Intelligence was here originally. I was with Interactive Intelligence, came over through that merger and have been there up till now. So throughout my career, I've been a technical contributor. Early on in my career, I kind of bounced back and forth between being a single contributor and a leader. I've been a project manager. I've led multiple service-related projects. Dabbled in sales a little bit, did some pre-sales, technical consulting, and then ops has really been my home for the last several years. Prior to education operations, I was leading an operations team in our customer support area for customer and employee experience. So I've been married for 28 years. I've got 2 daughters, and my newest chapter in life is an 8-month-old grandson. So that's been very interesting to now have a child that has a child, and for me to be called grandpa. So it's been very exciting. So today we're talking about really trust and buy-in. If you've been working for any amount of time, with a show of hands, how many have experienced one of these things? If you haven't, it would be shocking, right? And when those things happen, they affect our teams in some form, and they affect ourselves. We may end up with a new team, we may end up completely out of the organization. So the story I have for you today is based on, it started with a phone call that I got on a Friday. This was about 1.5 years ago. The current VP that I was reporting to said, I've got an opportunity for you. And when you don't know what's about to be told to you, opportunity is a bit of a loose term. So Genesis is doubling down on our strategy. We're making some changes in the organization. Your current team is going to be impacted. They're going to be shuffling around with some other teams in the organization. But we've got an area of business that we feel that could use some leveling up. They need some work with some process improvement. They've got a lot of manual tasks that are happening. We'd like for you to drive some automation. We'd like for you to work on the tech stack. There's some technical debt there. They're not maybe using tools as well as they potentially could. And then lastly, they want to do some self-service type activities. Great. These are things that I'm comfortable with. These are things I've done. It sounds like a good opportunity. So let's talk about the team. What kind of team are we building here? And they said, well, teams, it's already there. It's completely established. It's been there for years. The leadership is not happy with the current leader. So you're going to come in and take over this well-established team, and we need you to drive change. Well, this is the first time I've done this. Most teams that I've structured, I've taken current resources and I've been able to pull in and build teams, or we're talking about hiring. So it was time to share the news. I had a couple weeks to kind of sit with this, take it all in, start talking to several of the leaders across the organization, and start to get a feel for the business. What are some of the challenges? What are the things that are happening? And it was time to share my introduction to the team and all the great things that we're going to do. So how do we think that went? Did not go well. If you're an Office fan, I was token. So what happened? We were going to start doing great things. The team is still intact. There was still structure. No one was losing a job. We're going to start building some new and great things. Well, for the team, this was a big change. They had an established leader. They thought everything was going well. So they're unsure of their future. Ultimately, for me, I've got my strategy. I've got things that we need to work on. But for them, this was new for them, right? They needed time to take this in. Ultimately, they didn't trust me. So this was an area of the organization that cross-functionally I hadn't had a lot of exposure to. This is something with cross-functional projects. I hadn't come across this team. Most of my work had been done in our customer support space. So after having some exciting conversations with the team where I got similar results, this was one of those opportunities where you listen to podcasts and you have the videos and you have all the things that you've read in books about what you need to do as a leader to try to drive trust and buy-in. It was time to work on the relationship. Because what I realized, my resume didn't really matter to the team. They didn't care that I came from a background of driving processes. They didn't care that I understood the tool stack. They didn't really care too much about the great things I said we're going to do with the technology. So as I started having these conversations with the team to try to understand more about what was going on and what we're going to try to work towards, I started hearing things like, oh, I've heard that before. We've been trying to do that for a long time. And that would be nice, but, and then name whatever the obstacle was. So in hearing all of this, I had to start considering this is going to be more of a people challenge than it is going to be a technical challenge. The hard skills for this, getting into the processes and the tools, that wasn't going to be as challenging as the people side. So as I'm having these conversations, I had to be honest with you. I don't have a lot of answers. I don't have an answer for everything, right? We need to get into this and we need to figure it out. But we're going to figure it out together. Understand the individual challenges. With a team this broad, each one of those teams had very specific issues. They were dealing with different tools. They had a lot of challenges that we had to kind of break into groups to look at this. More so than just dealing with their day-to-day, it was understanding what concerns do you have. Not just about your job, but this is a big change, right? I'm new, you don't know me. We're talking about doing a lot of new things and taking things in different directions. So there was fear, right? Teams that were doing a lot of manual tasks, when you start talking about driving automation, then they start wondering, well, what does that mean? This is going to take away my job. Are you going to build something that's going to replace me? And it wasn't about that, it was about value, right? It's about taking away those manual repetitive tasks that we do so we can focus on more higher value things. And to their surprise, I asked, how do you think we should do this? And to most of them, they hadn't been asked. They were just told, this is what you do. These are your processes. They had been documented. Here are your workflows. But I wanted this to be something that we built together, right? I think if we're truly going to be successful as a team, and we're talking about building trust and buy-in from your team, they've got to be a part of it. Simply listening and acknowledging, I believe, goes a huge way towards buy-in and trust, right? I may not do everything, right? They may come up with ideas that we won't do. But how often have you started to go through a new process or something that's going to change, and you had an opportunity to share your opinion, and it maybe didn't go the way you thought. It didn't go that direction, but you felt better about it because you at least got to get it off your chest. You got to at least express your opinions, and you felt like you were part of the process. So we went through this for months. This is over months of dealing with this. This is a business top to bottom. So some time had passed, and I started to notice some things. Some things started to feel a little bit different. Some things that happened that started to clue me in that I think we're headed in the right direction. I started to see consistency. In the beginning, every day, every week, I couldn't tell you what was going to happen. The teams were unsure, and because they were unsure, they weren't, I wouldn't say they weren't working to full capacity, but there was a guardedness to what they were doing. They were very, they were protecting their own, so to speak. Those things started to smooth out. Things started to go back into what was normal. Investment. This was huge. In the beginning, whenever we were talking about new processes and new tools and how do we do things, it was me talking 99% of the time. It was me setting up a meeting with the right individuals and me talking through it and asking and trying to pull that feedback. Well, that started to change. We started to have meetings. I had team members that were starting to launch their own meetings and talk about how we can improve the process, how we can do better. Accountability, that started happening across the team itself. I stopped having to check in on things so often. The team started becoming more and more, they were more independent in how they were running our business, right? The extra, I use the extra because I needed to fit it in the same box. But it's going the extra mile. So we want our teams to do that, right? And we sometimes ask our teams to do a little extra from us from time to time. But those things started happening more organically. There's a report or maybe something I had asked that we needed, here you go. But I also checked on this because I think it'd be important for this to know this next thing. So we started to see the teams taking those extra steps, starting to do more, kind of starting to come out of their shell a little bit more. And creativity, this was huge. When you're trying to drive process improvement, use technology better, build better processes, self-service. Again, so many of these meetings were me trying to lead the way, and coax them out. This was kind of one of those turning points that I noticed with the team. I had a meeting that we had called to look at something in the invoicing process where it had a bunch of extra steps, and we needed to work through it and improve it. It was taking a long time. Jumped into the call, everyone joined. Before I could say anything, one of the team members, one of my self-support specialists, said, I've already been thinking about this. I think I know how we can improve this. This was a huge change from what I had previously, especially from this particular self-support specialist. This was one that was very much guarded. This is not what I do. We don't do this. We don't do that. A lot of short answers. We started to see this. We started to see the change in the team members. See it starting to build. Why? These are my opinions. This is my opinion of why I think these things happen. We tried to make them feel safe, right? They'd gone through a major change. They had saw some pretty dramatic change across our wider organization. Customer success was the larger organization. They weren't sure what was going to happen. I created a space for them where, tell me your opinion. I want to know your opinion. We're going to figure this thing out together. I wanted them to know they were supported. Things are going to break. Things are going to happen. That's okay. We're not throwing anybody under the bus. We're building something better for our business. They were included. If you remember previously, there was a shock when I asked, how do you think we should do this? They hadn't been asked that before. Making them included started to make them invested. They wanted to be more accountable. These things were building into the trust and the buy-in that we were going through. They were hurt. I asked opinions all the time. I even told my team, if I say something dumb, tell me. If I say something that you know is not going to work, you've got to tell me. I want to know. I want to hear from you. And in the end, all of these things built into a team that was finally starting to feel bought in, right? We had taken, this had been close to a year process. Don't get me wrong, there was bumps and there were valleys throughout this process, but we got there. So as a leader, there are some behaviors that I think contribute to this. Consistent. If you remember, the first thing I said I noticed from the team was got more consistency from them. I feel this is reciprocal as a leader, right? I think as a leader, your teams will respond to you. They'll respond to how you react, how you show up, how you handle things. And that consistency, I believe, is very reciprocal in your teams. Communication, this was huge. I don't know about you, but I hate getting on a call where someone expects that you know something, and this is the first time you've heard this. I didn't want that for my team, and I wanted to make sure that they felt they were in the know and I was communicating with them. Keep your word. This is huge. This is one of those things that I don't mean you say we're going to finish a project at the end of the month and it doesn't happen. I'm talking about the small things, all these little things that happen every day, every week. And it may not seem like a big deal that you didn't deliver something, you didn't give them an email, you didn't give them a communication. But over time, this starts to erode, right? If you're trying to build trust and buy-in with your team, these little things, that slowly starts to chip away. Be authentic. Again, I try to share experiences with my team that I know they can relate to. right? As a leader, oftentimes you get into a room, if you have a room where you've got a team that's in front of you, it's hard to get them to speak sometimes. It's hard to get them to be authentic with you because they have some preconception of as a leader, what you are. But you're another person, right? The things that I want as a person, your team wants to, right? Be authentic with them. Continue to build trust. This isn't a one and done. This isn't something like, phew, I got it. I'm done. I can move on. I can just check the boxes on the projects and things. I really feel like trust and buy-in is kind of a rental situation, right? I think there's kind of a base where you start to get that trust and buy-in from your team, but then there's all those interactions that happen, that continue to happen. Projects, new strategies, escalations, something breaks, somebody, makes a mistake. There's all those opportunities where you can continue to build trust and buy-in with your team, with how you react, with how you show up, with how you behave with your team. Or you can go the other way. You can start to erode that trust and buy-in. So this is a great, Simon Sinek's someone I like as a thought leader in the leadership world. This is a quote that I really like. There's a part of it that I would tweak slightly. So trust is maintained when values and beliefs are actively managed. Companies do not actively work to keep clarity, discipline, consistency, and balance, and trust starts to break down. Good. My slight tweak to this is trust is maintained when values and beliefs are actively managed. If leaders do not actively work to keep clarity, discipline, and consistency and balance, then trust starts to break down. I feel like this is something that's more personal as a leader. This is something that you're doing directly with your team. It's great if every leader in an organization is doing this, then sure, you could call it a corporate initiative, but this is a personal thing that you're doing, right? That clarity, that discipline, that consistency, it's what your teams need to thrive, right? You're creating structure, you're creating the environments for your teams to be successful. So what I'd like to leave with you today is, as leaders, we're responsible for creating that environment of support and trust. At the end of the day, they're meeting with you regularly. They're getting direction from you. They're getting what's going to get them through the day from you as a leader. We're setting the tone for how teams react and how they show up. That's where I talked about that consistency. It's reciprocal. In my opinion, if you work with a team that's hard to work with, I bet there's a leader that's hard to work with, right? Because they get that, right? You deal with a leader and your team so much, those behaviors rub off on one another. And I think if you're doing all the things that we kind of covered today, it's so much easier to drive your strategy, your vision, your direction, and ultimately the buy-in, it just starts to happen. For me, there was some realization that I had to have that my resume and that my credentials wasn't going to be the thing that was going to drive success for the team. It was going to be me doing all of those things that we talk about to build trust and buy-in. Any thoughts or anything that you would like to add on to that?
Back on creativity, when somebody has a good idea or feels that they have a good idea and you want to implement that, how did you recognize that? Was it financially? Was it through other avenues? How did you recognize their achievements?
It was a combination. So we actually have a really good recognition system. It's kind of tiered. We can do something where you just kind of give someone like a high five and it gets sent out to the company. But we have all-star awards and MVP awards. So I do a combination. Part of what I like to do is if we're implementing something with our leadership team, I like for that team member to be the one to present the idea, right? I want them to talk with the leadership about the idea they've come up with because I want them to own that. I'm there to support them, but I'm not there to be the one like, this is what I've come up with. But ultimately, it was a combination of that, and then we had some financial awards that we would provide for those types of activities.
What was the size of the team and how senior or junior were the team members?
I think I have about 16 total in the team. This is 16 total that is supporting about a $16 million business. Very high volume, and we had individuals up to about 9 to 10 years that have been on the team. So to include the leader that I ended up coming in behind had been with the team for about 9 years. So I had a very long relationship with the team, and they went from me, who they didn't know who I was.
So the odds were stacked against you.
Yes. Sure.
What was your turnover rate on the team during the time of transition?
0.
Excellent.
Didn't lose anybody. Now, I'll say it was an established team. I think that makes a huge difference. Early on with this, I had several leadership meetings where that was the conversation. You think you're going to lose anybody? You think someone's going to quit? We said it for a while. And for a while, my answer was, I don't think so, but I'm not sure. I'll keep you posted.
So I had a couple of things. So I want to take, I want to take your presentation and have it on hand when I get a little bit further and say, what do you think servant leadership is? I think there it is. So thank you for that. I'm curious, bearing in mind that this is recorded, that I wanted to ask, as far as you talking more from your position to your team, I'm curious about your relationship to those above you, if they share your view of what I would call servant leadership for your team, or if you kind of have to massage that or work on that.
No, I worked very closely with our VP of Beyond, and actually she was quite supportive, and we had a lot of conversations because she had actually been one of the founding members of this particular part of the organization, so she had been with most of these team members throughout the tenure of the business. So she was very much on board with making sure that we were taking the team in the right direction, obviously from a business standpoint, but I felt very supported as far as the personnel aspect of this.
And then my second thing is, was your team distributed, or were they mostly in person? I'm curious if there's distributed added to your ability to relate.
Yes, they're entirely global. I have 3 now that are here. I've got team members in the UK. I've got a team members in Chennai, and then some team members in Manila.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Mike, you led a lot of teams through Genesis. Do you think the knowledge of the organization was valuable as you changed roles and moved, or do you think it's really the focus on the team?
Absolutely. I think in most organizations, there's a politics to the way that the business runs, kind of behind the scenes. And having been with Genesis for 8 years, there were aspects of it that did make it a little easier. It was easier for me to reach across the aisle, so to speak, to get some support from other supporting organizations, but for sure. Had I not had that, if I was someone coming in from the outside, completely brand new, it's probably been a little bit of a different situation. I think I had a lot of support from other parts of the organization to help.
What was the timeline? So like when you were presented with the challenge versus, kind of going into this and some of that turnaround that you saw, was this like 3 months, 6 months?
I really feel like this was honestly close to the end of last year, and we were kind of pushing towards about 11, 12 months. It was about a year process. There was a lot. There was a lot to unpack. You're talking about a support organization, a sales team, a data and analytics team, and then a tech team. They're all doing completely different work, and it was trying to. And I'd say the other challenge, which I didn't cover here, it was siloed. Even though we were the same team, we were an operations team. I often got the comments of, "You need to talk to this other person. I don't do that." And we had to have a lot of conversations about we're all going to be successful, right? If you can support one another, if you need help, and someone doesn't want to help you, how does that make you feel? And so there was a lot of, I'd say there was a lot of, you could tell the previous leader was just not focused in certain areas. So, yes.
So you mentioned most of your team is global. What were some of your tactical strategies for building personal rapport with the global team?
Honestly, it's a lot of, in the beginning, I asked a lot of questions, but I tried to ask questions that allowed them the ability to reach out and to speak and to listen. And we had a lot of, I'd say in the beginning I probably had, I don't want to say an excessive, but I had a lot of one-on-ones. It was a lot of spending time, and again, when I talked originally about what are your concerns, again, it wasn't necessarily, I knew what the business was doing, I knew what we needed to work on, but it was personally, how's your family? What's going on at home? Things like that. So a lot of the strategy was literally just one-on-one time. Understanding If I'm going to say that I'm here to support you, you've got to do it. You've got to be there, and you have to spend the time to do it. And I would say that's why it took so long. I would say there wasn't a time period on it that I had in mind. What I had in mind was having a fully functional team that I knew was going to be successful. Yes.
You did talk about in that meeting the employee coming up with their own ideas for a solution to the invoicing process. Do you do anything to help drive people explain their own ideas or coming up with their own ideas, or do you let that happen naturally?
It's a combination. Some people for sure just don't want, if I say, hey, you've got a great idea, let's share this with the leadership team. I've got some, they're like, sure, sounds great. And they'll jump on and we can talk through it, and they're comfortable talking with some of our executive leadership. Some are absolutely not. They're like, yeah, I appreciate it, I'm glad we're doing this, but you can explain it. If they want me to, I'll write an email. So I think I leave it up to the person. I don't want to put someone in an uncomfortable situation. But I'd say on the flip side, I have an example would be one of my administrators for our LMS. She doesn't like presenting. I put her in a situation to present a couple times because I think she has the capability to do it. So I think there's also some room for some stretch goals where you can grow a little bit. And she has presented a couple times, and she's done well. And she's like, well, it isn't so bad. So I think I leave it up to the employee, but I think there's opportunity there where you can see where maybe they can get a little bit of a push and do a little more.
One final question, any? Mike, thank you.
Hi. Good morning. Good morning. Doug told me I had 3 hours. And anybody from the South in the room? I may have to get you to translate for me. I'm from a southern, like Alabama. Okay. So that's fine. I mean, I've got some friends down there, but I'm going to talk a little bit differently about it. I've been in a leadership role for a very, very long time. I started out my career as an X-ray tech, and so 14 years in, I don't know if any of you know anything about strong Southern women. I'm married to one, but you have to, and I was raised by a whole group of them. My first job was managing a radiology department that was mostly strong women, and they were my teachers. And so I had to learn how to lead differently at that point in time. So I'm going to draw some conclusions between coaching and leadership. I mentioned I'm from Alabama. Have you heard about the University of Alabama? I am not a fan. I'm an Auburn fan. And they just won the SEC basketball championship the other night. It was great. Bruce Pearl's a wonderful, wonderful coach. So I think I know how to work this. There you go. So, like I said, I'm going to draw some comparisons between coaching and leadership, because in our roles as leaders, our job, my job, and I think Doug mentioned that today I'm not the CIO, but I was one for 30 years. And so it took me that long to figure out I didn't want to be one. No, I'm just kidding. Is that the organization I lead is, my budget is larger than typically the company budgets of where I've worked previously. And so we're a 13 hospital system here in the Midwest of Indiana. And I have the opportunity to create the person who's going to take my job when I retire. And they keep asking me, when is that going to be? But my wife says, no, not now. And so I'm married to a critical care nurse. We've been married for 50 years. I have 4 daughters. Thank you. I remind my wife there are people that are in prison that don't serve that long of a sentence. I typically get hit. And so we've raised 4 daughters. That's why I have the daughter haircut. But I'm also was also a healthcare CIO, and I don't know which one is the harder job, raising girls or being a healthcare CIO, but they both require a lot of patience and money. So, and I love my girls, and I have 6 granddaughters and 1 grandson, and he's rotten. He'll be 3 years old coming up in June. So I don't know if you know Ken Blanchard. Okay, he's a great leader writer, and also Doug Shula, who's also a great coach. Business and coaching. And this quote came from one of their books. And I think that it's very appropriate. The last one is from President Dwight D. Eisenhower, but I'm reminded that he was actually a general and a soldier before he was President of the United States. And I know leading men in battle like he did during World War II, it takes a lot of leadership in order to get people to do what you want them to do, but they may not necessarily want to do it. And so he led from the front, and I really admire him for that. The other thing is that in business, I'm in healthcare. I've been in healthcare all of my adult life. I literally walked out of high school on June the 6th in 1971 and stepped into a hospital in June the 7th in 1971. And other than a very small stint going to the dark side of the vendors, I've been in healthcare all my life. So the terms that we use in business and coaching, they blend and be back and forth between the spectrum. And it's really great to see how those words can carry forward. So whether you want to be a coach or not, in the role of leader, you are a coach. And you have to look for those opportunities to help coach your people to success. Because I will promise you, and in a minute or two I'm going to talk about making sure that you take an opportunity for those coaching moments, because the behavior you get is the ones that you teach. And so if you don't correct the bad behaviors, then you're telling everybody it's okay. And I have several stories over my career I could tell, but Doug told me I only had 3 hours, and so I don't have time to tell all of those. But the really important thing about our jobs as leaders is to get the right people on the bench, the right people on the field, and also have people that can back them up in the event that they're not meeting the game plan of that day. So one of my most favorite coaches is John Wooden. Everybody knows John Wooden. He is an amazing coach. He coached for 41 years, and when he was at UCLA, he won 10 national championships in 12 years, and he had 4 undefeated seasons. That's pretty amazing. It's not easy to get the group of young people to play at the level that he asked them to play. I've kind of watched Bruce Pearl do the same thing at Auburn. Auburn was not known for a basketball school. I went to UAB during the time that UAB was a basketball school. And my kids went to Indiana. It used to be a basketball school. I'm still waiting for them to get back to that. And so my children and my money went to IU. But one of the things that, John Wooden, has got a lot of success. When asked about the success that the accolades that were reaped upon him, he basically said he'd much rather consider himself as a coach, as an example of leadership and discipline. And these lists on the slide right there is the list that his father gave him. He wrote down his personal creed when he graduated from elementary school. Now, those of you who have children, I'm not sure how many of you thought that your kids could incorporate this into their life, but I think he really did. And this is what made him the man that he is. And so that tells me that his father was also a great coach and an excellent leader. So you're going to see a few military quotes in what I'm going to talk about this morning. How many veterans do I have in the room? Thank you for your service, and thank you for the sacrifice of your family. So Norman Schwarzkopf says, when you're in command, take charge. And I think that's a very important thing. But there's another one on the next slide that actually I kept underneath the glass of my desk for about 20 years. And it's Secretary Colin Powell. So doing the right thing doesn't mean that you always can make everybody happy, but you do the right thing for the right reasons. And then the other people will see what you're doing. I think Mike talked about, being present and being approachable. But it also there has to be consistency in the message that you provide. So I'm going to talk about these, not necessarily every one of them, and I know this is a little cute, but you raise kids, you want to be cute if you're going to get a point across. And so you have to do communications, you have to over-plan, not plan. You have to have an attitude, consistency, and honesty and humility. We're going to talk a little bit about each of those in just a moment. But the one thing that I'm reminded of, Socrates had a great saying, you have but one mouth, one tongue, and two ears. And so I have to be reminded that I have to listen twice as much as I speak. And I was well trained by strong Southern women, but I also have a friend of mine that was an ER physician that taught me that I need to listen. Not listen to what, so I can rebut, so I can have a comeback, so I can explain, but listen to what is being told. Because if you really listen to what's being said, there's a lot that's not said that you need to listen to. And so Tom taught me that if I listen very carefully, and he had a friend who was a cardiologist, and he was part of my training team as well, is that if you listen carefully, they'll present you with a solution, even when they're angry. And most of the time they were angry. I was a CIO, so it fell to me to go stand in front of the buzzsaw, but Tom and I became good friends. He was a great pilot. Unfortunately, he lost his sight and he can't fly anymore. So speaking of flying, and so when you have to have a plan, and you have to be able to communicate that plan over and to your team. I mean, Mike talked about that. Is you have to explain why you're doing what you're doing, but you also have to listen to get that feedback and look for those opportunities to provide that coaching. And I'm sure that Charles Lindbergh had a plan when he was flying over open ocean by himself, solo. And I also bet that he had a plan of what am I going to do if I have to ditch this plane. But once he had that plan, he executed it, he knew what he needed to do, and he just did it. And every time I see this quote, I think about Jimmy Stewart. He was the one that played Charles Lindbergh in the movie. Great movie, and great individual. The other thing is that there was this old saying about attitude equals altitude. I don't know where I heard that saying, but I really truly believe it's true. Now the saying at the bottom of this slide is one of my favorite movies. It's Remember the Titans. And the reason I like this movie is there's two reasons. One, I was in high school during the exact same time period, so I truly understand the tensions in society that was going on at that time because I lived them, so did my wife. But the other thing about what the movie illustrates from a leadership standpoint, if you have a process and a plan in place to allow the people on your teams to succeed, and they know that you have their back, they're going to be successful. There's a lot of great rhetoric in that movie. If you haven't ever seen it, go watch it. There's another one that I like a lot. It's called Second Hand Line. If you haven't seen that one, it's a great one as well. So one of the things that I'm really reminded of, I've watched the Masters. I'm a golfer, not a real good golfer. So if anybody wants to feel good about their golf game, come play with me. My father told me when I told him I was going to play golf, he said, son, the only thing you can afford is the tees. He was right. But my wife lets me play because I think it gets me out of the house because I work a lot of days at home, and she said, just go, sleep on the lawn. So one of the things I mentioned that I have 4 daughters. My number 3 daughter, when she was in high school, was a track star. She was, as my other daughter said, she's the girl that all the other girls hate. She's 5'10", blonde hair, blue eyes, and she was a jock. She 3 relay teams that she ran on, and the cross-country team set school records that have not been broken in 20 years. But the thing about it is, I watched those girls over the course of middle school and high school, and they were no more talented than anybody else that hit the field. The one thing they had was that attitude to win. And they didn't want to win it for themselves because, as I mentioned, she ran on teams, the relay teams, the cross-country teams. They won as a team. And they wanted to win not for themselves, but for the team and for the school and for everybody else. And Katie is a social worker. And when she decided she wanted to be a social worker, I said, so what do you want to study? She said, I want to be a social worker. I said, have a seat. So that was a cue to me that I need to do some career coaching for my daughter. And she said, and I told her, I said, Kate, you know, we have some friends that are social workers. You know they can make a whole lot of money. She said, I know, Daddy, but I can make a difference. And so she makes a difference every day. She works in a school corporation in Southern Indiana. She runs the Blessings in the Backpack program. And when kids were out in COVID, she made sure they were fed. So, and I have another daughter, a number 2 daughter, that when she was in 2nd and 3rd grade, she had 2 learning disabilities that we found out about. And either one of those she could have used as an excuse to not be successful and to have bad grades. But she didn't do that. And so now she is an elementary school teacher in the Shelbyville school system. So we had somebody from Shelbyville here earlier. So she teaches at Logan, the elementary school, and she's really good at it. And her husband works for Domo. Anybody know who Domo is? No, nobody does anyway. But he runs communities for Domo. They're a database and data science. But the other thing too is one reason I mentioned my daughters in this is because I typically, when I give talks, I always include my family because it's personal to me, as is my team. I've been with Franciscan for a little over 5 years, and I've got to know each and every one of the folks on my leadership team and another level down. I don't know everybody, but I know their name. But I think, Mike, you mentioned you need to understand their family. And, you know, work gets in the way of life. And so you have to treat the people as if they're part of your family, and they have to be allowed to be their family. But this slide is talking to us about playing to win and not to lose. I mentioned, I think it was Roy McIlroy or one of the other golfers from Europe, that he was winning the Masters all the way through, and the last day he just blew up because he was playing conservatively. The same way, I'm a Colts fan, and like I said, I'm an Auburn fan, and I learned how to handle disappointment really well. Barry Bryant always said that he didn't care about the national championship. He just wanted to beat that little cow college across the other side of the state, and that was Auburn. But I've watched the teams that are making sure that they have a lead, they hold on to their lead, and they're not playing to win, they're playing not to lose. And that's really not the right attitude. It's like us in business every day. If we're not driving our teams, if we don't have goals that are really stretch, and we can't explain that to our team, and our team does not see us stretching our own self, then they're going to give you a mediocre performance at the very best. And so my recommendation is to play to win, not to lose. Healthcare is a very difficult space these days in order to play to win. My organization is owned by an order of sisters. If any of y'all tell the sisters what I'm going to say, I'll say you misunderstood me. The sisters took a vow of poverty, and the rest of us did as well. Because it's about the mission of the organization of serving the communities and where we are. This is the second Catholic health system I've worked for, and I really, really do support that mission. Maybe that's why I have a daughter that's a social worker. I don't know. So our teams have to play in order to win, in order for the organization to be successful. And my role as a leader is not to be the quarterback, but I have to make a football analogy about my position. I'm in the center. I'm the guy that's going to hand in the ball. I'm going to run interference for them so they can be successful. And I'm successful when they're successful. And the organization is successful when everyone is successful. So The other thing that I'm reminded of is it's not what we say, it's what we do. And you know, this may sound like I'm a little paranoid, but I've come to understand over my many years of leading teams and being responsible and accountable is they're watching. They're not watching you when you're at work, they're watching you when you're not at work. They want to know who you are as a person and how you manage your life as well. So, and I've come to realize that I'm never at work. My dad was a sheet metal guy and a welder. He worked for Goodyear for 43 years. And I always wondered, when I graduated high school, I asked my dad, so get me a job at Goodyear. Well, I won't tell you exactly what he said. My dad was a Marine. He fought the South Pacific. He could get quite colorful. He said, no, son, if you want to screw your life up, you're going to do it yourself. I raised you to use your mind, not your back. And I come to find that he told my brother the same thing. So he wouldn't get me on at Goodyear, so I didn't apply. I went to college. But the thing I always wondered, who was smarter, me or my dad? Well, my dad could do three-dimensional math in his head. He built three-dimensional objects. I think he was smarter than I am, because when he was not at work, he was not at work. He didn't have to worry about work until he walked into the plant. But I'm always at work. I just ask my wife, she'll tell you. But the reason I say this, how many of you have seen Batman Begins? There's a point that Rachel Dawes, she makes a statement to Bruce Wayne. It says, and she said, it's not who you are underneath, it's what you do that defines you. And so that's another great quote, but it's not about what we say, but it's more about what we do. So, how many of you read The Good to Great? Great book. If you haven't, pick it up. They interviewed hundreds of CEOs and companies, and they found many that they considered to be great leaders. And these are the characteristics that they put in the book for a great leader. But the really interesting thing, they came up with this idea of the window in the mirror. And one of the things that each one of what they considered a great leader was that when their companies did really great, they either apportioned that praise upon someone else or just good luck. And the other thing they did is that they didn't go really well, they looked in the mirror and they blamed themselves, not somebody else and not bad luck. And so it's that accountability that our great leaders have. Now, interesting enough, most of the 5 leaders that they talked about in that book, all their companies are now bankrupt and gone. So that book's written a long time ago. But the thing about it is that the very first attribute of a great leader they had was honesty and humility. And those are 2 characteristics that I've found in my life you can't fake, at least not for long. And Mother Teresa told us if you can't feed 100 people, feed 1. So, so if you can't help everybody on your team, help 1. Because it's my job as a leader to ensure that if I decide that I'm going to retire, I'm going to do something else, or I get hit by a bus, that there's somebody else that can step in and do my job. And I think, knock on wood, I've got that person teed up. And he's going to be great at it. So, the other thing is a strong leader will set the pace for others to follow. And this goes back to Chuck being a little paranoid. I've been accused of not being self-aware. Well, I'm a dumb old country boy from Alabama. Who the hell can be self-aware if he's a dumb old country boy? But my grandparents had a farm and I worked on that farm. But the thing about it is, as leaders, whether we're aware of it or not, people are watching what we do. And so we need to be accountable all the time. We need, the other thing too is that you need to build relationships where they feel comfortable with you and you feel comfortable with them. You have to be approachable. When I first joined Franciscan, I was at my office and up on the 11th floor, that's where all the execs are. We have a little building in Beach Grove. It's 11 stories tall. First 6 are parking garage. And I had to knock on the door. and it was one of my storage guys. And they said, can I come in and have a conversation? I said, sure, I see. My door's always open. He said, now, I'm not going to get fired for having this conversation. In my mind, I said, well, why the hell would I fire you for walking in the door talking to me? He said, well, we're not typically allowed on the 11th floor. And I said, well, guess what? The 11th floor is open to everybody. Your badge will bring you to the 11th floor, and you know, come on back and see me anytime. So we talked for about an hour. And it was really interesting because I had other people come in after that when they realized that their new leader could be approachable. And I'm the first CTO that Franciscan has ever had in that executive role. And I'm a corporate, they call me chief. I'm not the chief, I'm just the guy that's responsible. I'm not in charge. Everybody else has to do that job. But the thing about it is I'm reminded is that everybody has a job to do and everybody has a role. How many of you have heard the story about when Congress went down to the vertical assembly building while they were building the Saturn rockets to put a man on the moon? Well, there's a group of congressmen went down and they were having a tour of the vertical assembly building, massive building. It had its own weather. It was so big. And they were in the evening. Most everybody else was gone, but there was a janitor that was sweeping the floor. And one of the congressmen says, well, what's your role? And the answer was, I'm helping put a man on the moon. And that's exactly what he should have said, because even, it doesn't make any difference what any role in healthcare is, we're all saving lives. Because we don't do our job, everybody else can't do theirs. So, one of the things I learned in PowerPoint 101, other than to be absolutely boring but with great graphics, is to tell you what I'm going to talk about, do that, and then I'm going to tell you what I talked about. So this is my wrap-up slide. The thing about it is we have to, as leaders, we have to be adept at motivating people. If you're great at it, that's good. But I've found that being just who you are, you don't have to be somebody else, because I tell everybody, particularly the people that come into the room to either sell me something or negotiate, if you don't like who I am, sorry, that's the only guy you're going to see. It's the same guy that I go home to my family every day, the same guy that I've been married to, my best friend for over 50 years. I am just that guy. You have to be very, very good about choosing people and to put them in the right role, and also be very good about moving the chess pieces on the board to get them in the right role. I mean, Mike gave a perfect example of that. They moved him to a role that he could help the company succeed. And the other thing, the hardest thing is building teams. I've taught classes on building high performance teams. It's not easy to do because sometimes your high performers are just pains in the ass. And so you have to help them understand how each member of that team is as important as the other members. There's no superstars. The one thing is, being a good communicator, I hope that I am one. I've been asked to speak on many occasions, and sometimes I get the point across, and sometimes I don't. Disciplinarian, you have to be willing to coach your people to the appropriate behaviors. You also have to be willing to tell them when they're not, because the things that you accept, the behaviors you accept, is what you teach. That was a hard lesson for me. I had an employee of 20 years, really bad behaviors, and I just let it go because he was a good guy. I knew his family. He'd lost his wife, and he had some hard times. But after a while, I finally said, if you can't get there, he said, we're going to have to do something different. And I still remember the day he was in my office, the day I was letting him go after 20 years. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. However, I met him a year later on the street downtown at one of the parades we had, and he's bigger than me. And so he walked up, and I looked at him, and he said, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And he said, I just want to say thank you. And I'm going, for what? He said, you letting me go got my attention. And he says, the next 2 jobs I've had, I'm now being very successful in it. So it may be a difficult thing to do, but it is the most important thing to do. I actually had to do that to one of my best friends. He's still my friend 50 years later. I trained him, but boy could not get out of bed in the morning. And when you're in radiology, the first guy in the door does all the morning portables and critical care and gets ready for surgery. I got tired of filling his slot, and I was his boss. And so I let him go. But Scooter was, today is very successful. I still don't know what his first name is. I just call him. And that's what he goes by. His driver's license has Scooter on it. So anyway, the other thing is that I think that we as leaders, we have to, be of excellent character. I've had the privilege of working for and with, and that's an important differentiator for me, working with some great leaders, is Alabama doesn't get ice and snow very often, not where I was raised, but we had a snowstorm and an ice storm coming in, and I'd call my wife, I said, I'll get you Dad to bring me some clothes over, I'm staying. And so that evening and the next day, those of us who were in the hospital were the only ones that could get there because everything else was covered in a sheet of ice. I delivered bedpans, I delivered meals, and I mopped floors. But guess who was beside me? The CEO and the senior vice president. They did exactly what I was doing. I needed to be there. They didn't need to be there. They could have stayed at home. They drove off the mountain where they lived to be in that hospital to provide services for those folks. So you have to be an example to your team. So I'm going to leave you with this one. So I think we as leaders have to be what we expect of our team. So be the change that you really want to see in the world. So thank you very much.
Jack, thank you very much. Lots of inspiration on the slides. You'll get all these slides. Just as a reminder, we'll send out a post-event email that has both presentations in it. Before we leave, there's a success story here that I want to mention. Steve, you want to tell briefly what happened for you?
Sure. So back in April of 2023, I was let go from a job that I thought I was doing okay, but not good enough. And it was really what he just said, the inspiration to improve. And I had a very good friend, Kevin King, some of you might know, told me about this group. I'd never been here before, never heard about it before. Started to come here, met some people. In my third meeting here, introducing myself, looking for a role. I was sitting at that table over there, and a gentleman by the name of Chris Sidla sat down next to me. He didn't know me, I didn't know him. He introduced myself, he introduced himself, told him what I did and why I was here. He stood up at the meeting and said he was here looking for a guy like me. He didn't say me specifically, but he said an infrastructure operations manager. 5 months later, I worked for Chris. It was a great opportunity.
I love hearing that. It's we didn't add the who's looking and who's looking for their next role until about 3 years ago, and we've had a lot of stories like that. So remember that the best time to work on your network is 2 years ago, and the second best time is today. So keep your network strong. You may need it someday, and it may need you someday. Thank you for coming. May 21 is the next event. 2 great speakers again, and I'm so glad you came. Have a great day.
Thank you.